In this tutorial we're going to look at one of the simplest ways of adding sound to your level. You notice in the first space in the tutorial there's actually no sound going on, and it gives it a slightly artificial feel. Now this is obviously some kind of building, and buildings usually have some sort of room tone to them. So this might be air conditioning, it might be some kind of mechanical object in the building, and that combined with the acoustics of the room and how sound is reflected around it gives each space a very particular feel. And if we find ourselves in an area where it's completely silent, it feels unconvincing. So if we walk into 101, you can hear that this has a kind of mechanical room tone going on inside it. If we interact with this button by pressing E, you can see we put some graphics just to illustrate what's going on. So in this inner sphere, the volume of the room tone is at its maximum, so it doesn't change. When we go outside of this, we walk away from the center, the volume drops off until eventually it hits silence. So if we go into the editor, we can actually see what's going on there. So I'm using the top-down view, and I'm going to select that ambient sound simple in the center of the room. I've turned off the graphics in this viewport by using the W key, just so we can see what's going on a bit more clearly. So here we can see our radius min and our radius max, and if we press the function key F4, we open up the properties of that actor, and we can see the settings for radius min and radius max within its properties. So if we change that to, say, a much smaller area, you can see visually it's changed, but also if we enable real-time sound, we can hear that it's now over a much smaller area. Again, it starts at the radius max and gets louder towards the radius min, but it's much more localized. Now for room tones, we might want it over actually the entire level or large areas of the level, so we might be using larger values of this radius min, radius max. Now all that the ambient sound simple does is it takes a WAV, so for example this one, and it loops it infinitely. Now you'll hear a lot of discussion about games audio where we talk about looping being a problem because it distracts the player, it loses a sense of proper immersion in the level. But for these kind of sounds, which are either a constant sound of a room tone or perhaps a mechanical sound that's quite looping by nature, then it's not so much of a problem. So we'll find ourselves using these actors for these room tone type sounds or mechanical type sounds. So that's it, and that's how it works. Let's go back and actually put one in our first room so we can add a bit of life to it. So this is how we do it. We open up the content browser. Now earlier we talked about the Unreal assets being kept in things called packages. So if we open up the content browser, we can do it either using that icon there or the Control, Shift and F keys on our keyboard. You can see that here we have our Explorer type view, and we can see all our packages, and we can actually also see what's inside them. So if I go to the GAT sound package, this package is then subdivided into groups just to make it easier to find things. And you notice I'm not seeing anything at the moment because what we've got is this very useful filtering system for filtering the results. So we can say, well, I only want to see sound cues, or I only want to see, in this instance, we want to see sound wave data because that is what the ambient sound simple wants. So we can click on that, and that's just a distant battle, which is actually just a recording of Bonfire Night here in the UK, November the 5th. People like to set off lots of fireworks. So let's find a room tone to put in our first area. What shall we have? Let's have a listen to some of these. So I'm using the space bar just to play. Okay, that's a bit too mechanical. What about this one? Okay, that's actually a recording of a computer fan, but I think at a quiet level that could work fine for our first room. So ideally you'll have at least 2 screens to work with, because then you can keep the content browser open in one screen and the level in another. I'm obviously screen capturing this, so if I had 2 screens it'd be so small you wouldn't be able to see what's going on. So we'll just have to try and work with it. There's a computer fan, so that's selected in my content browser, and then I'm going to right click in my level, and it's already given me an option to add an ambient sound sample using the sound that I've got selected in my content browser. This approach you'll be using time and time again, that things are selected in the content browser and you keep them selected there, and then you go and do use them in either the viewports or in Kismet, which we'll be looking at a little bit later on. So for the moment I'm just going to add that. And you can hear, because we've got real-time audio enabled, you can hear it's already there. If we look top down, you can see it's got a default min-max that's pretty large, so it's already covering our whole room. The problem is that it's also intruding into this area, which I happen to know is an outdoor space, and it's not going to suit having that kind of room tone in it. So what I need to do is press F4 and go into its properties and make it considerably smaller, so it's just covering the area that we want it to. So some random values there, so I'll just make that a little bit bigger. And the other thing we've got control of here is our pitch and volume of the sound. So you can see this sound slot has used the one I had selected, and we're just going to make it nice and quiet, so it's just a subtle room tone going on. Now the other thing is with room tones is they don't come from a specific point source typically. They're just there. They're all around you all the time. So you notice with this one, as I move my view around, you can hear it panning from one speaker to another, and that's a bit distracting for this kind of background ambience. So what I'm going to do in its properties is turn off spatialize, and then you can hear that it no longer pans. Okay, it's just there, and it makes that first room feel a bit more natural. So if we fire it up, we should hear that now we've got a sound for that area. Now the tutorial level, as you can see, takes a while to start up, because basically it's building out a version of the level for us to play in. When you're working, then I'd advise you use one of the exercise levels or one of the template empty levels we've given you. It's just going to make the whole process much faster. So here we are in room 1. Okay, and now it feels more like a place. Now the use of min-max is particularly important because we're trying to make these kinds of spaces feel real and authentic. Of course, it is raining and there's a roof on the room, but just ignore that for the moment. So as I'm just going to wander around this room quickly, and you can hear that it's not just one massive loop sample of rain going round and round and round. It's actually specific samples using min and max of the ambient sound simples to have different rain samples in different areas. So at the end there you can see I'm sheltering under the trees, and so the rain is going to sound different than if I'm in that open space, or if I'm inside the hut, or if I'm around these kind of hollow barrels. Let me just turn that off for a moment. So I'm going to press the home key, so we're just looking at that. So there's quite a localized ambient sound simple around those barrels. Another one for the hut. Here's our general rain sound, rain on water, and rain under the trees. And as you can see, each one of those has got a carefully considered radius min, radius max, so that it's feeling quite natural. So although I started by saying it's a simple way to add sound to your level, which it is, you then need to consider things like, does it go in through to the next room, and should I localize it around a specific area, and other things like that to actually make your level feel real and convincing and good.